Happy Monday afternoon and welcome in again to That's a W. My name is Vince Wolfram. I am your host. And what a way to cap off another great weekend of college basketball. Rivalry games Monday to Sunday. And now we're looking at a new slate of the week. But we are going to take a look back, break down all the games from the weekend in a way that is digestible, that you can take it into a brand new week of college hoops. Here on the College Sports Company, we want you to subscribe here on YouTube, or if you're an audio listener, follow under That's a W. We don't want you to miss anything. We've got a lot of exciting things coming up here on CSC, and on That's a W, a lot of people joining, a lot of conversations, and a lot of games to be covered. Plenty of fun stuff on the way, and we would not want you to miss it, so make sure you like, comment, subscribe, comment if you're new. And let's just jump straight in. Let's not waste any time. We previewed the weekend on Thursday. Obviously, so many big games across the different conferences. Saturday, full of great games. We're talking about every single hour. I got a notebook that sits on my desk where I write down which games I want to watch at which hours. And there was games every single hour of the day on Saturday from noon all the way till 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with Gonzaga tipping off against rival St. Mary's in the WCC. Where we start in focus here, we're looking at a Big 12 clash. Number 14 Kansas hosting number 13 BYU at Allen Fieldhouse. The 1,000th game played in Allen Fieldhouse, and you could tell because the energy was just about that high. And everyone coming into the game, including ourselves, as we talked about on Thursday, we were keyed in on the big matchup of freshmen. Dybantsa, Darryn Peterson. These guys are going to be top 2 or 3 picks in the next June's NBA draft. Obviously, both of these teams fighting for a position in the toughest conference in college basketball, the Big 12. And Darryn Peterson made a statement, but with a little bit of an asterisk. The first half, Darryn Peterson was fantastic. One of those performances where you say, well, we haven't seen a scorer like that in college basketball since maybe Kevin Durant in his days in Austin playing for Texas. He went off. We're talking about 18 points, only missed 1 field goal, 3 threes, 3 steals in 17 minutes. He brought it on both sides of the floor. Offensively, we know Darryn Peterson to be an elite 3-level scorer. 3-level meaning 3-point shots, mid-range, and getting to the basket. He did all 3 of those things. The second I knew Darryn Peterson was going to have a great game was the second he got the ball on the wing, had Dybantsa guarding him. A screener was coming to set a pick and roll, and Peterson waved him off. He said, I don't need it. Let me go one-on-one here. And then he got a bucket. And he repeated to get buckets, repeatedly, bucket after bucket after bucket. It felt like he was taking over. Has the monster dunk showing the athleticism, obviously, that lights Lawrence, Kansas ablaze. I've never heard a crowd pop louder this season than his big dunk against BYU on Saturday. Now Kansas goes into halftime with a 20-point lead. And we don't see much of Darryn Peterson in the second half. Didn't play much due to what Bill Self called cramping. He was obviously didn't play in their last game. Kansas's Darryn Peterson did not play in their last game. Started practice on Thursday, meaning Thursday, Friday, and with a game on Saturday. Maybe he didn't have his wind under him, have his legs under him in this game. I don't know, but this is a problem that we've seen repeatedly with this guy, and it's called on Kansas to do one thing: the supporting cast to step up in a major way. Kansas's supporting cast won this basketball game against BYU in the second half. Bryson Tiller being a guy that I pointed out on our Thursday show in previewing this game, because I knew that Kansas had the size advantage against BYU. You're talking about Flory Badunga and Bryson Tiller on the inside, and they played like it. Bryson Tiller was the reason that this game looked the way it did. Without him, Kansas doesn't look the way they did on offense or defense, and this game might not go in Kansas's favor. Tiller, 21 points, 7 rebounds, 1 block, 8 of 13 from the field, 3 3-pointers. Kansas needed somebody to step up. Bryson Tiller did exactly that. He was exactly what Kansas needed. Both sides of the ball, was blocking shots, was contesting shots at the rim, was switching on to Dybantsa, trying to slow down what was a red-hot Richie Saunders, which we'll talk about in just a minute. I thought he was great, brought the momentum. In times where BYU's comeback was starting to churn, Bryson Tiller had a dunk to quiet it and fire up the Lawrence crowd. He stepped in at all the right moments. And another guy that followed up Darryn Peterson in the first half was Trey White. I thought as a partner, as a duo in that first half, Darryn Peterson and Trey White Trey White were awfully hard to stop. He was hitting shots right alongside with Peterson. And in the second half, I thought his rebounding was huge because he's basically a 6'6", 6'7" two guard for Kansas and plays with every bit of that size, attacking the glass, getting rebounds, making his impact felt on the game. Here's what I think. Kansas is an Indianapolis-level team, a Final Four level team with Darryn Peterson on the floor. Without him, they're good. They just have to figure themselves out a little bit. They need guys to step up, and we've seen that happen. When Darryn Peterson goes out of the game, Melvin Council, who they call the dog, they start barking every time he puts the ball in the basket. That's a guy who steps up. Flory Bidunga didn't have his all-time best game, but that's a guy who's improving every single game. And those guys stepping up in the absence of Peterson is something that we've seen for pretty long stretches in the season this year with Darryn Peterson in and out of the lineup. Impressive from Kansas, a great win. For BYU, they're dangerous, and they're very starter charged. And what I mean by that is their starters are the main meat of their offense and defense. And I think outside of that is where inconsistency has gotten them in tough spots. Richie Saunders was the MVP of this game on both sides. I know we talked about Peterson and the impact that he made in the first half. Richie Saunders was the best player on the floor, especially in the second half. A career-high 33 points, 10 rebounds, 6 threes. And it's not even the scoring for me that separates what Richie Saunders does. It's the instinctual stuff, the reflexes, the coordination, the physicality aspect. I've fallen in love with how the guy rebounds. 10 rebounds for a dude who has to step in against the trees in Bidunga and Bryson Tiller on the opposite side. You got to go fight for rebounds, and he did that all night. Showed toughness, relentlessness, for 40 minutes. Every last minute he played, he showed that. The overarching narrative is going to be that Peterson dominated AJ, but I don't know that that's really the case. I didn't mind, frankly, the game that AJ played. I thought he did a pretty good job of using the gravity that he holds against the defense in a way that could benefit his teammates. Because just the sheer amount of attention required from a defense to try and stop AJ Dybantsa from getting to his spots, to getting where he wants to make plays on offense, is enough. Like, that's a lot. And that leaves other guys like Richie Saunders. And I thought his recognition of coverages inside the gaps and Kansas's rotations and making the game simple outside of those first couple minutes where I do think he was a little spooked by the fact that he was being guarded by Flory Bidunga. I don't think that was a wrinkle that BYU expected. So credit Kansas's defensive staff on that front. But overall, I thought AJ didn't play maybe as poorly or as not stand-up-ish or stand-out-ish as maybe some will look back on this game in June when the NBA draft is here if these two teams don't play again at the Darryn Peterson versus AJ Dybantsa show. I didn't think it was as one-sided as maybe it might come across. Regardless, this was an insane game, a blast of a basketball game to watch, and for BYU to climb back into this one like they did was beyond impressive. Credit to Kansas and the game that they played, and they're winning. And, man, if Darryn Peterson can keep playing like that, they're going to be a special team to watch as we inch closer to March. The next big matchup we talked about on Thursday was down in the SEC. Kentucky traveling to Fayetteville to face an Arkansas team that was red hot, especially at home in Bud Walton Arena. I gave you the tips on why Kentucky might win this game, and looking back on it, majority of those had to come true for this game to fall the way it did. Kentucky gets an 85-77 win in Bud Walton against a red-hot Arkansas team. And Otega Owe said it. He said, shout out to us, because Kentucky showed up in the first half, which we hadn't seen very much, if at all, this season. And it was something that I pleaded for the Cats to need to do to try to win this game. They can't get down early and have one of those miraculous comebacks that they had in their 5-game winning streak in SEC play. Otega Owe was the production train leader for this UK team. 24 points in this game. He was the edge. He was the toughness. He was the getting to the basket, the leader of the offense, whatever you want to call him. He was the head man for Kentucky in this game. Showed why those preseason Player of the Year titles were thrown next to his name coming into the season. That was the guy who showed up for Kentucky, and they need to see more of him. A little bit of resistance from Kentucky was good to see, too. They were up by 13 in the first half. They completely blew that lead, despite starting well in this game. But where I thought they won the game, where I thought Kentucky really, really made their mark and won this game, was that they were lights out in transition defense. We mentioned how Arkansas was a top team in college basketball when they got out on the break, got running, and you were in a track meet with them, and that's how they were going to beat you. Well, Kentucky did a great job in limiting that. One of the best teams in transition in college basketball got held to a season-low 4 points. I thought Malachi Moreno, his older brother, Michael Moreno is his name. Malachi Moreno, the center for Kentucky, did a great job, I thought, controlling the motion of Arkansas's offense. They made Arkansas play in the half court more, which was I thought was key. Keep them out of the paint, force Arkansas to make tough shots, and that's exactly what Kentucky did. I thought they made Arkansas play half court offense. And Arkansas, they bought back a little bit. They bit and bit and bit at the lead to try to chomp their way back into this one, but struggled from deep. They shot 21% from three-point range, and Kentucky just had to score. They had to get outpourings from Moreno, from Owe, from Aberdeen, from Chandler, and if you look at the box score, they did exactly that. And obviously, I think people walk away knowing the drama of this game. There was, I think it was 6 technicals over the span of 40 minutes, 3 technicals in the span of 38 seconds in this game. Controlled a little bit by the refs. I think they got a little bit too into it, yes. And I think that happened a little bit both ways. Bad calls, make-up calls, technical calls that should not have been technicals. It gets chippy, and that's what happens. But I think sometimes in a rivalry game like this, which it is a rivalry game, there is no doubt about that, you got to let them go a little bit. There's going to be talk from one side to the next. There's going to be chatter between blue and red. You got to let that play out. I thought in the middle of that second half, it did impact the game because Kentucky I believe it was an 8-point lead. Arkansas gets 5 free throws, and all of a sudden it's a 3-point game. That happened both ways with the foul calls and the timeouts and the different things. A lot of stoppages. So a miserable game, frankly, if you watched it from start to finish. But in terms of physicality, in terms of two teams getting after each other, you saw that in full display. And Mark Pope gets a win over John Calipari and Rick Pitino, 2 national championship winning coaches at Kentucky. And an interesting stat that I saw that I think is worth pointing out is that John Calipari and Mark Pope both started at Arkansas and Kentucky in the same year, right? Calipari leaves Kentucky, Pope leaves BYU, gets the job at Kentucky. They start the same season. If you look at their records since they started at their new schools, Mark Pope has 1 game more in the win column than John Calipari does. Interesting to think of the fire, the seats, the fire under the seats that both of these coaches have. Calipari's being far less than that of Mark Pope's, yet Pope has actually won more games. A little bit of interesting tidbit to think about there. That was a great one in the SEC. That one supplied, I think, a lot of the SEC fans the game of the night for them. The Big 12, they had BYU, Kansas. The SEC had Kentucky, Arkansas. And the Big 10 had to wait until they had Friday night. And then the Big 10 resumed, I thought, on Sunday between Illinois and Nebraska. The Illini go to the Cornhuskers in Lincoln, get a 78-69 win. And this Illinois team keeps proving how good they really are. A 10-0 run, I thought, with 6 minutes and 30 seconds to go made the difference. Put Illinois up 10 in a game that was close. They were battling neck and neck the majority of this game. And what makes Illinois different to me is just how deep they are. And it's not the roster depth. Yes, you can look down and see that they played 9-10 guys. It's the quality of the depth. They have guys who don't just like pass to pass. They pass because they know where a teammate is or they know where the play is going. They're ahead of the game. Very instinctually responsible players. Keaton Wagler being a main one. He wasn't the Keaton Wagler we saw against Purdue in the first half, but in the second half, he was starting to get into that mode. He got aggressive in the second half, and what I think he does so well, maybe that most freshmen don't, or maybe just most guards don't, is he gets aggressive in the middle of the floor, and when you do that, it opens up so many different opportunities for your offense to take an advantage. That's what he did in the second half, and that was the big change for Illinois. He stayed in that middle channel, was able to find shooters in the corner, cutters to the baseline, kick out threes, pick and pops to his guys, Markovic, to Ivisic, all of those guys. And that's why the second half was controlled by Illinois and Keaton Wagler. That kid is really, really stepping up. I thought Jake Davis stepped up, knocked down important shots, threes, finished at the rim, was pretty good on defense as well. The Ivisiches, both of them, Tommy and Zavonavir, were both great on defense, blocking shots at the rim. Nothing is safe in there. And as I always say, if you win the boards, you win the game. And that was true for Illinois. They won the boards, and they're just so consistent. And that's what jumps off the page to me about the Fighting Illini. And this game, I talked about it being neck and neck, and it was. If you read the stats on this game, watching it, you could tell it was close. If you read the stats and look at them in depth, especially the advanced stats, you'll realize, whoa, this game was really close. But that 10-0 run with 6:30 left really changed the pace of the game. Rank Mast back in the starting lineup, back playing. Obviously missed the Michigan game earlier in the week. He scored his first basket with 55 seconds left in the game. Nebraska knows they can't win like that if their star player hasn't scored for the first 38 minutes of this, or for the first 39 minutes, I guess, of this basketball game. What kept him in it was 15 triples. Obviously, if you hit 15 threes, you're going to be competitive, but it wasn't the typical way Nebraska was playing, and I think credit to Illinois on that. They went zone. That was an unexpected wrinkle as well. Nebraska in the first 5 minutes of the game was almost at a stalemate. Oh, I guess I take that back. They started the game well, and then when Illinois switched to that zone, they were at a stalemate for I would call it an 8-minute span in that first half, trying to figure out how to score. Putting Jacobson on the baseline, letting him run, and let the offense figure it out through there. It was great to see Braden Frager back on the floor for Nebraska in the game, leading his team in scoring. I thought Hoiberg was fantastic again. I think he's such a great leader for this team. And that's why I think Nebraska is for real, because they have a guy who's, in terms of production and percent of minutes and possessions used, a guy who's 8th or 9th in Hoiberg on their roster, being their leader, being a guy who steps up and makes a difference for them, gives 110% on every single play. That's the kind of player I love to see. It's a player that I would want on my team. In this game, Nebraska had 3 times the bench production that Illinois did. I thought Nebraska was just decent on offense. Like, they were making shots. They actually made a higher number of shots than Illinois did, but the difference was at the free throw line as well, and that cost Nebraska a little bit too, having guys in foul trouble. Illinois shot 21 of 26 from the free throw line, where Nebraska just shot 5 total free throws. A great game in the Big Ten. I think 2 of the top 4 teams in the Big Ten, if you're looking at it, Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois, and Nebraska. Those are my top 4 teams in the Big Ten, all of which faced off either against one another or against one of the other in the course of 4 or 5 days here in college basketball. 2 more games before we get into the rest of the segments in the show that I thought were super important to note. Florida, Alabama on Sunday afternoon was a very big one. 2 of the top teams in the SEC, and I think it's time maybe that we start realizing Florida is for real when they put it together. What I think the difference is, obviously their front court is absurd, and we'll talk about them in just a moment. But Condon, elite. Thomas Hall, elite. Ruben Chinyelu, an absolute monster. We've said it time and time again. The team is going to need to make threes and step up the guard play if they want to do something. And I think what Boogie Flan needs to do, and today really tipped me off to this feeling, was defensively, I think, is where his motor really gets going. And I don't know that I would have said that a couple of weeks ago, but 8 steals against Alabama's guards. 8 steals in one game from Boogie Flan. His attention to detail, his ability to get in the gaps. He was intentional, I thought, in this game, and that made a big difference. It teed up Xavier Lee to get baskets, and what Florida's bigs do so well, and I noticed this with Micah Hanlogden in the middle and Alex Condon as well, making lanes for Florida's guards to get to the basket and score. Back screens, Gortat screens, as they call them, because Marcin Gortat, the old Wizard center, was so great at doing this for John Wall, stepping into the defender's way to get a point guard space or a guard space, a driver space, to get to the basket without that interior defender there to try to oppose the shot. Those Gortat screens set those off, and Florida does it so well. They do it almost voluntarily. They step in and do these Gortat screens, and it opens it up. They did it on a lob today against Alabama. A back screen it was Thomas Hall had the basketball, a back screen from Micah Hanlogden to just clear more space for Alex Condon to get this lob and dunk it. He didn't even need to, but he just did it to make more space, and it worked to perfection. This Florida team is so impressive. If they can keep that production up defensively, if Boogie Flan can get that motor about him, I think this Florida team is going to be one that can absolutely compete for a spot in the Final Four. Alabama, on the other hand, looked a little down today. Don't know what it was, but the pace was slower. Florida beat Alabama at their own game, which not a lot of teams have done this season, and I think it's time that Alabama maybe take a step back, resettle because they've had a tough couple weeks here in SEC play, losing to Texas, losing to this team, having a close one at Oklahoma. But really, really impressed with Florida in the game that they had. Texas Tech at UCF was another big one. Space U gets a dub over Texas Tech, who just beat Houston a week ago. They get that week off. We talked about how they needed that rest, and they came out a little flat. And UCF, there's not a lot to talk about, in my opinion, in this game because UCF is a top 40 team. We know that. They're one of those sleeper teams in the Big 12 where if you have to go to Orlando, it might not be good for you unless you bring your A game. And I thought that UCF did a good job in the first half. I thought when they switched to a zone, trying to force Texas Tech to make threes, which they had so far, but Texas Tech just seemed a bit slow. That 2-3 zone did their best to try to capitalize and contain JT Toppin. That worked for a little bit in the first half. In the second half, he was able to get rebounds and do his thing, but they were trying to force other guys to beat him, and I think that might have worked. Or it could have just been a bad day from Texas Tech shooting the basketball. But regardless, UCF, impressive. I'm not trying to take anything away from them. It was just a game that they had a 6 or 8 point lead the majority of this game, and Texas Tech really had no answer. It was kind of a smooth coasting game with UCF having this lead and Texas Tech trying to follow it, but runs being stunted by that of UCF. So many good games, and we're going to get to breaking down some of these games and players and guys as we go here. Our next segment here is the starting five. We've got 5 positions to fill and a topic to address. Today we are going to build a starting 5 of the most improved players in college basketball. This one was frankly more difficult than I thought it was because there's so many guys who really, really produced on the mid-major level that have come to the Power 5 and the high major level that have really produced as well. But that step up has to be noted. I'm looking at guys who have taken on a second year or have transferred to a new situation and really, really boosted their game. We'll start at the number 1 spot here, the point guard, Tyler Tanner of Vanderbilt. If you look at his stats, it is strikingly different. He was a guy on a team before, and now he's the guy on that team now. Tyler Tanner, if you look at these stats here, averaged 5.7 points per game as a freshman at Vanderbilt. This year, he's averaging 17.8 points. The three-point numbers are up by about 12%. The field goal percentage once sat at about 55% in the season. Obviously, as he's taken more as the season has gone on, that percentage has gone down, but still impressive, just south of 50%. This guy is really producing, has changed the direction of where Vanderbilt basketball is going, and the rest of the guys on his team, Duke Miles, they're all following his direction because Tyler Tanner has NBA talent, and I think you're going to see that come June or July when that NBA draft comes ticking around here. That's a guy that NBA scouts are going to be licking their chops, raising their eyebrows for because he is a bucket getter and can play defense. He's stout, he's sturdy, but the improvement, and Mark Byington talked about this when I went to the game against SMU in November. I might have been December, actually, now that I think about it. That jump from freshman to sophomore year, Tyler, absurdly good. At the 2 here, we've got Duke's Isaiah Evans. This is a guy who was a super highly touted recruit, right? But he played in 36 games at Duke as a freshman. But his stats were far, far different than what they are this year. And yes, his three-point shooting percentage might be down a little bit from that 41%, but he's taken far less of them, almost 3 threes a game less last year than this year. The point totals show just how improved his game is. And you can see, if you watch this Duke team, that 6-point to 14-point explosion has come similar to, like I mentioned earlier with Darryn Peterson. Isaiah Evans is a 3-level scorer. He can score at the basket. Him getting to a mid-range and knocking down those shots at the elbow, at the baseline, those different shots, that's an arsenal that Isaiah Evans did not have last year. He stepped in games against Auburn at Cameron Indoor or games in ACC play and was the 3-point guy. He's far more than that. But Slim is absolutely still a sniper, the last guy on Duke that you want to leave open from deep. Our small forward, our 3 spot on this list of most improved players in college basketball is Nebraska's Pryce Sandford. This is a guy who transferred from Iowa Played there as a freshman and a sophomore, transfers to Nebraska, and his numbers look entirely different. He has one of the smoothest games offensively that I've watched in college basketball this year. I am a Price Sanford basketball enjoyer. 17.4 points. He rebounds well. His most rebounds, almost double the rebounds that he had last season at Iowa. Can really shoot the three, 40%. That matches his total from last year at Iowa. He's a great free throw shooter. He can really do all the things on the floor, but it's just the silky smooth nature of his game that I like, and his ability to not just find his shot, but seek his shot. Get in spots that'll give him that open look, and when he has a tiny bit of hair of space, he's going to knock it down. At the 4 spot, we have a guy who, I put him at the 4 spot because that's where he first started. Florida's Thomas Houck. This is a guy who has improved so much over his 3 years at Florida. He started in 23-24 and then 24-25 as a 4-man. On their national title team, he was the backup 4-man, coming off the bench, playing that power forward spot, was definitely more of that rebounder inside and then stretch the floor if he need to kind of player. This year, they took a chance, and Florida moved him. Todd Golden moved him to that 3 spot. That's enough trust in a player that I've seen from anybody. That's an improvement in and of itself. Trusting a guy enough after a national championship season where it seems like it all went right in the end and was all working perfectly and beautifully, to move a guy who played and was one of your better players up a position. Can he guard a 3? Can he play offense at a 3 spot, being guarded by a 3? Who knows? And that's where Tommy Houck has really stepped up. You look at his numbers, he's all SEC. He's SEC Player of the Year front runner, in my opinion. And I think that move to the 3 is the exact reason why. Obviously starting, playing more minutes, 9 more minutes than last season, shooting a lower percentage because the volume is higher. He's literally doubling his field goal attempts from last season to this season. His 3-point percentage is higher. When he comes off that dribble handoff that he loves with Ruben Chinyelu, puts the ball in the ground, plants that foot, and pulls up for 3, I think it's cash every single time. That stop and go is elite. He's a spot-up shooter. He's a great driver. Because he's so tall and long, for a 3 to guard is a very tough spot to be. He's been great for this Florida team. And even when the guards were bad and the bigs have maybe even struggled, there's been one consistent guy on this team that has brought Florida wins and victories this season, and that guy is Tommy Houck. Our 5 spot here, there were so many options to go here. I was thinking about Flory Badunga, a guy that's played college basketball he started playing basketball in general, if you can believe this, in 2021. It's 2026. He's played 5 years of basketball, up for one of the most improved spots in college basketball is Flory Badunga. I didn't go with him, though. I thought Milan Momcilovic as well, Joshua Jefferson, those Iowa State guys who are shooting the ball great, winning games. I'm actually going to go with a different pick here. I'm going to go with Miami's Malik Reneau at the 5, a guy that transferred from a Mike Woodson, Indiana program. He was there for 3 years. His sophomore year was his best of the 3 years. Indiana struggled last year. I was curious how his role would grow and expand in this Jay Lucas Miami Hurricane system, and it certainly has. You look at the numbers, and that tells the story. 19.9 points per game. He's rebounding more than he ever has. He's assisting at a super high rate. He's blocking more shots than ever, playing that 4-5 role for this Canes team, putting the ball in the basket, and he and Trey Donaldson are the two-headed snake of this Canes team, and they are proving that they can win games. I know they lost a tough one against Cal in Coral Gables on Saturday. That's a game that I think they wanted to win, obviously, but Reneau really has impressed me this year in his jump from that third-year guy at Indiana to that transfer senior that needs to step up for a team that has to have that 4 or 5 spot to dominate and take some pressure off of Trey Donaldson in that Miami backcourt. Flory Badunga might be the 6th man there of this starting 5, but that is my group. The most improved players in college basketball to me, 1 through 5, Tyler Tanner, Isaiah Evans, Price Sanford of Nebraska, Tommy Houck, and Malik Reneau of Miami. 5 great players there, all super improved. I love seeing when guys can take their game to the next level. Those guys have done exactly that. Let's head now into another next level segment, the One Shining Point segment, where we listen to the sounds of college basketball from last week. I'm going to stay on the Tommy Houck train here because there was a lot of chatter between head coaches before this game began on Sunday. And I love when the coaches get talking like this because not only does it give us something to laugh and talk about, but I think it's interesting the jabs and the pokes that they do have. Todd Golden, the Florida Gators head basketball coach, was on their usual Florida Gators radio show leading up to this game with Alabama and was asked how the addition of Charles Bediako to this Alabama team changes anything. Take a listen to what Todd Golden said.
Is it a distraction?
We're going to beat him anyways.
Like that?
If he plays, we'll beat him anyways.
Confident Todd Golden thinks that his Gators could beat them anyway, and you're not going to believe this, but when word is spoken, it gets back to the man. And Nate Oats heard about what Todd Golden said on that Gator network, and Nate Oats kind of agreed. He realized that that's how a coach should think. You should think you're going to win every game. You're the defending national champions, and you should win every game. But then there was a little extra jab at how that Florida front court had been playing, how it had been so productive. A little jab from Nate Oats.
Their rebounding, I think paint scoring and rebounding are two of the biggest issues with this team. They can score in the paint at a high level, and they go get a bunch of offensive rebounds. And when you can sit in the lane for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds at a time, helps your offensive rebounding quite a bit.
A little chirp here, a little chirp there. Well, it's all going to get settled on the court, right? Oh, yeah, it did. And Florida got a big win, 100 points on Alabama, gets nearly a 30-point win over the Crimson Tide, and checkmate, said Todd Golden after the game. Take a listen.
Beat them on the glass. We scored 72 points in the paint. I thought our guys were in there for 1 second, 2 seconds, and then we would score it. So we did a good job taking advantage of our catches down there, and our bigs were really, really good today.
There is the little bit of the college basketball world that thinks some coaches have gone soft, that they're not as tough, they're not as nasty maybe as they used to be. Teams don't hate each other as much. Well, I think little things like this are trending us back in that sort of direction. We like to see the intensity. We like to see the heat level rise. And I think interactions like this are awesome, where they can go at each other. Obviously, Nate Oats and Todd Golden have coached against each other for years at this point, and they know of each other. Their systems are in the same conference. They get it. They know each other. But a little bit of chirp never hurt anybody, and it just helped there in Todd Golden's situation, being able to put the exclamation mark on that argument as the Gators get a big win over Alabama. Let's head now into our last segment of today's Monday episode here on That's a W, the Honor Roll, our weekly honor society highlighting the best players of the previous week in college basketball. You guys know the deal. 10 categories, top to bottom, highlighting the best of the best in college hoop, and we start with the best environment. I'm actually going to go with UCF, and I'm going to add another asterisk on there. Asterisks have been our thing today because they did rush the court twice. The first one, they rushed the court with 0.2 seconds left after a referee called a foul with that much time left on the floor. UCF students obviously did not care. Space U is fully on the floor celebrating, but the Texas Tech players couldn't leave the floor. And that made it kind of weird. And then they had to get all the students off the floor back in the student section just so they could complete 0.2 seconds of game time. They threw the ball in. Somebody touched it for Texas Tech. Clock ran out. Back on the court came Space U students. 88-80 finish in Orlando. And that's just the most bizarre experience that a student could possibly have at a game. Rushing the court 2 times in one afternoon at Addition Financial Arena in Orlando. I thought it was fantastic. Shout out to UCF for not only winning that game, but having a hilarious situation with students on the floor with time remaining. I thought it was great. Best coach, we're looking at Mark Few. St. Mary's Gonzaga on Saturday night. That's a game in the WCC we look forward to every single year. Gonzaga down Braden Huff. Graham Ike back for the first time in a couple of weeks. He has 30 points, 14 in the first half, 16 in the second half. He's just a winner. That guy can straight up ball, and he did. And he proved that to St. Mary's in a game that St. Mary's won the 2 regular season visits between these two teams. Last season, Graham Ike wanted his lick back. I know he got it in the WCC conference tournament, but in the regular season, he hadn't won in over a calendar year. So Ike got that back on Saturday night in Spokane. I thought it was a great coaching job there from Mark Few. Had his boys in a close one with St. Mary's, leans on that leadership of Graham Ike in the absence of his twin and partner in crime there, Braden Huff, and Gonzaga gets a win over St. Mary. The best freshman, we're looking at Nate Ament from Tennessee. This is a guy who came in with a ton of super high expectations. And in his last 6 games, we've seen more of that Nate Ament than we had in the middle of this season. 17-plus points in his last 6 games. In the middle of the season, he lost a little bit of confidence. And I think he's starting to get that back now. You can see he's attacking and getting to his spots, aggressively trying to get to the spots where he knows he can best perform. It wasn't his best shooting day against Auburn necessarily, but 22 points, mainly knocking down free throws at the line, shows that he's getting defenders to bite on it. He's getting more physical. A step in the right direction for Nate Ament's freshman career at Tennessee. Love where it's going. He's turning that freshman corner, which is a good thing to see for Vols fans. The best offense, I'm looking at St. Louis, the Billikens. During their 15-game win streak, Josh Schertz's group has outscored their opponents by 26 points per game. When you watch this group, and if you have watched it, you know exactly what I mean. It feels like they score on every single possession. At least 2 points, whether it's a free throw or a 3, whatever you're going to get. It feels like they're walking away from their side of the floor on offense with more points than when they got there on their trip initially. They're the number 1 team in the nation in effective field goal percentage. They take and make great shots. They're the best team in the A-10 right now. The Billikens, the talk of college basketball right now, and they got my best offense for the week. Best defense, Iowa State. Now, they had a bad spell. Kansas and Cincinnati, they needed that spell, I think, to show what this team can do and to snap back in it, especially on defense. In their last 3 games before Sunday's win against Kansas State, against 3 top 65 offenses, Iowa State allowed 57, 71, and 67 points, and they had won by 30, 13, and 30. The craziest part is that not one Cyclone had a block in their last 2 games, yet that same Cyclones team had 29 steals in the last 3 games. They are a pesky defensive group in the passing lanes. When guys are dribbling, no back pocket is safe because they are going to pick it and try to make offense off it. 29 steals in 3 games is a little nuts. Shout out Iowa State, winning big, winning with defense. The best offensive player, we mentioned him earlier, BYU's Richie Saunders. Career high, 33 points against Kansas, 10 rebounds. I love his ability to rebound and how intensely he attacks the boards. He answered the call when BYU needed it most. He kept BYU afloat in this game. He hasn't had a single-digit scoring game since December 9th against Clemson. This is a guy who is on fire offensively. Best defensive player, Flory Badunga of Kansas. He was granted the unfavorable task of guarding A.J. Dybantsa on a Saturday night in Lawrence, Kansas. That job's not easy. He had A.J. wide-eyed in that game, and to that I give Flory Badunga credit. Statistically, his numbers might not jump off the board on defense in this game, but it was the impact, the play-to-play impact where his length, his size, was shutting down driving lanes, scoring opportunities, altering shots at the rim. A huge impact in this game, and he was great on offense too. But defensively, Flory Badunga, huge impact for the Kansas Jayhawks. The best win, I'm going out to Westwood, to LA, Indiana in double overtime against UCLA. They almost soiled it. They were up by 10 with about 2 minutes left. UCLA comes back in the game, forces overtime, goes to overtime. One wasn't enough. They needed a second one, and it's a freshman 55% free throw shooter, steps to the line with 0.3 seconds left, knocks down a free throw to give the Hoosiers a win. Hoosiers stacking up a couple important wins here with wins over Purdue and now UCLA on the road in Westwood. That's super important for this Hoosiers team because, like I mentioned, I think they are a tournament-level team. Toughness, grit, can shoot the basketball. Lamar Wilkerson, one of the best scorers, if not the best scorer in the Big Ten. They're great. And I think if they get in a tournament spot, that's not a team you want to match up with, but they got to get there, and they do so by stacking wins like they got in L.A. against UCLA in double overtime. The best loss, I'm looking back to earlier last week. Nebraska loses at Michigan. You go to Ann Arbor. You lose by 3 after winning 91% of the game. You proved yourself. That's what Nebraska did against Michigan. They really did prove themselves. I think people didn't expect them to be in this game. They still had questions about if they were real, which, like I mentioned last week, I think is a bogus argument. Obviously, they're real. They're competing. They're beating good teams. They beat Michigan State. Ranked teams are going down to Nebraska and losing. They go to Ann Arbor against a top 2 team in college basketball, and you lose by 3 in a game that you were leading for the majority of it without Rank Mast, without Braden Frager. Impressive. That's the best loss of the week. Nebraska to Michigan. And the best comeback, I've got 2 for this one. The first of which, George Mason over St. Bonaventure. Bonnies, they led 96% of this basketball game. They led by 14 points. They shot 45% from 3 to George Mason's 24. George Mason was out of this game. There was no shot, right? Wrong. 77-73 win for the Patriots. The Bonnies, they moved to 2-7 in A-10 play. George Mason, on the other hand, 8-1, second in the A-10, sitting behind St. Louis. The other game, the best comeback last week, we talked about Rick Pitino getting his 900th career win against his son after being down by 16 points against Xavier. This week, Xavier down by 18 points to DePaul, who led 93% of this basketball game, gets a buzzer beater win, 68-66. Richard Pitino got his lick back on us from just a week ago. It's time the Musketeers got one like this, so they locked it in and got a win over DePaul after being down 18 points. That's a nasty comeback, but that's good stuff. The honor roll this week in college basketball, there it is. Best environment, UCF. Best coach, Mark Few. Best freshman, Nate Ament. Best offense, St. Louis. Best defense, Iowa State. Best offensive player, Richie Saunders. Best defensive player, Flory Badunga. Best win, Indiana in LA against UCLA. Best loss, Nebraska to Michigan. And the best comebacks, George Mason over St. Bonaventure and Xavier over DePaul. And the honor roll is going to roll us to the end of another weekly conversation around college hoops here on That's a W. If you're out there, stay warm. I know there's a lot of cold weather, snow, sleet, ice, all those things all over the place. So stay warm, stay safe, and please do not get in any sledding accidents. Not good. Stay away from yellow snow if I had to give you any advice. But we can't appreciate you more for being here on this Monday episode of That's a W. If you're new, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe here on the College Sports Company's YouTube page. And if you're an audio listener, make sure to follow, rate, and comment. Refer this show to another college basketball knower, and we will be in good hands. It is February 2nd. We are only inching closer, day by day, counting down the days to the best month of the college basketball calendar. That is March. The madness, the chaos, all of it will continue, and I'm excited to do it with you twice a week, every week, here on CSC. As always, appreciate the game, celebrate its people, make somebody new smile today, and winning is a lot of this or that, but this is a win, and that is a W. We'll see you guys later this week. Have a great one.